Go ahead, Senator.
We'll move to SB-360. SB-360.
Did he ask us to pull it from consent? Was that?
No, you misunderstood that, Senator.
Oh,
If it were April Fool's Day, maybe we would have, but go ahead.
SB-360 requires clergy to report suspected child abuse or neglect, even if they acquire the knowledge or suspicion during a penitential communication. Clergy are already mandated child abuse and neglect reporters in California. This bill would level the playing field by holding them to the same standard as the other 45 mandated reporters listed in statute. As mandated child abuse and neglect reporters, doctors, psychiatrists, therapists, and others have to break client privilege and report suspected child abuse and neglect without exception. But under existing law, clergy can lawfully ignore suspected child abuse and neglect if they acquire the knowledge during a conversation that is intended to be confidential. Child abuse is clearly still a pressing issue in faith institutions. Last Thursday, a priest was arrested in the Bay Area on suspicion of 30 counts of child sex abuse in 2016 and 2017. And on Friday, Pope Francis issued a decree making it mandatory for Vatican City officials to immediately report abuse allegations, the first of its kind in the Catholic Church. California would not be trailblazing with this measure. Connecticut, Indiana, Mississippi, Nebraska, New Hampshire, New Jersey, North Carolina, Oklahoma, Rhode Island, Tennessee, Texas, and West Virginia already have similar statutes. They operate under the same Constitution and the same Bill of Rights that we do. And we have found no legal challenges to these statutes in those states. It is time for California to put children first. I do have witnesses, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hill. Do we have witnesses in support?
Hi, my name is Cameron Torres. I'm an abuse survivor. And it all started with my mother. She was born and raised in San Francisco into an abusive family background. And in her early 20s, she was recruited into the Jehovah's Witnesses around the same time that she became pregnant with me. They convinced her that Satan, the devil, controlled the entire world, including her family. So she ran away with me, where I was born and raised in a small town with nothing but Jehovah's Witnesses. And, naturally, I was raised in a God-fearing family, so I loved her and I wanted to do what was right in God's eyes. At a really early age, at around 6, I was taken advantage of by a man in the congregation. He was really, really close to the family, so they trusted him. But my mother suspected something was up, something was wrong, so she asked me and then went to the elders. When I confirmed that, they told her, it's in God's hands now. Don't speak about it. We'll look into it and we'll do something about it. And they didn't want us to talk about it for fear of, again, Satan, the devil, trying to attack the one true religion. So nothing happened. And a few years later, it happened again with a different man. And they said the same thing. Don't speak about it. It's in God's hands, and they'll take care of it. So these two men I had to grow up with, staring at as abusers. And they're still loose in the congregations to this day with higher positions, and they're surrounded by children all the time. So it was up until about 2 years ago that I realized that I had been lied to my entire life. I found out that I grew up in a cult, and that they were hiding thousands of sex abuse cases. This is a public safety issue for all religions, governments, businesses. Clergy penitent privilege has been around for the last 100+ years. This will cost the state less money for having to rehabilitate people who turn to drugs and alcohol and other uses when they don't have an outlet. SB-360 aims to end this clergy privilege and have mandatory reporting. I think it's time that the universe is telling us to protect our children.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support?
Matty Hyatt from the California.
You may stay at the table. You may stay at the table. Go ahead. You can speak at the mic. Apologies, so I was speaking to the other witness.
Sorry. Yeah. Maddie Hyatt from California Civil Liberties Advocacy. Just wanted to quickly state that we follow the no harm principle. We don't feel the state has any right to regulate thought or belief, but when people act on those beliefs and their conduct oversteps other people's rights, we feel that the First Amendment rights of one cease where another neighbor's 14th Amendment rights begin. That's the no harm principle, and that's why we support this bill as a civil liberties issue.
You're in support. Okay. Keep.
Marissa Gonzalez with the National Association of Social Workers, and we are in strong support of this. Thank you.
Zeb Leatherman, on behalf of my aunts, Linda and Dorlin, I strongly support this bill.
Thank you.
My name is Candace Conti. I'm an abuse survivor, and I strongly support SB-360.
I'm Kathleen Conti. I'm an abuse survivor, and I strongly endorse SB-360.
My name is Stephanie Carson. I am an abuse survivor within a religious organization. I am in strong support of SB-360.
My name is Alexandra Topol. I'm the daughter of my mother, Stephanie, my stepdad, Brian, both both abused in the religious. I'm in support of SB-360.
My name is Star Paul. I am an abuse survivor inside the Jehovah's Witnesses. I strongly support this bill.
My name is Jolene Rivera. I'm a child sex abuse survivor. And I'm in strong support of SB-360.
My name is Sister Sophia. I'm in strong support of SB-360.
My name is Tara James. My mother was raised in the Jehovah's Witness Church, and I'm in strong support of 360. The world needs to change, guys. And it changes with this.
Edward James, stand in strong support.
Allison Hopkins, Mother Abbess of Sister of the Valley, Sacramento, in strong support.
Brother David, Sisters of the Valley, in strong support of this bill.
I'm Sister Kate, Mother Abbess of the Merced Sisters of the Valley Convent, and I have a number of sisters with us who have suffered this, and we're so glad you're taking it on, and we're in support of SB-360.
My name is Lena Samuelsson. I'm with the Sisters of the Valley, and I'm in strong support.
My name is Megan Griffin. I am a sexual abuse survivor, and I am in strong support of this bill.
Good morning, Madam. My name is David Alvarez. I'm a representative of First Nations, California Yaqui Association, and I support this bill, SB 360, because I think it's a long time coming. We know as First Nation people what it is to be abused and how children have been abused from the very beginning. We all are not strangers to what happened to the American Indian people, and I see it continuously happening. I'm honored that I was asked to come down here, and I was invited to speak in behalf of this. It's been far too long this abuse has been going on, these laws that protect these abusers. Oh, all my relations, thank you.
My name is James Sanchez, and I'm in strong support.
My name is Karin Bentley. I was raised in a religious institution. I've seen many people who have not had their abuse reported to lawmakers. It's kept inside the congregation. I've seen it in many different religions. I've been part of the Antioch School District. I've worked with children who have been abused by teachers. I've seen the effects that it's had on children for years. I have friends outside of the organization who were abused as children that have turned to prostitution, drugs. I've seen the damage it's done to children, how hard it is for them to survive, the cost it has made to society. I've seen the statistics where only 30%, 20% is reported. There are many more that are not reported. It's affected society for a long time. I am currently the Secretary-Treasurer of SCAARS. We started an organization to stop child abuse, advocates for reform and safety. We thought the only way to change society and help society would be to change laws and change culture, the way people think about it. We want children to be happy and free to go report it and to be congratulated and honored in reporting it so they will have pride and not have to hide. We want them to feel good about themselves. We want them to move on with their life. I'm in strong support of this bill. Thank you.
I'm Roger Bentley, Vice President of SCAARS, and we've chosen to be the voice of those that don't have a voice, the 2-year-olds, the 3-year-olds, 12-years-olds. They're the most vulnerable and the most innocent, and I think you can see from this group that that voice is being heard. So SCAARS is in strong support of SB-360.
Thank you.
My name is Mary Hyatt. I was sexually harassed by an elder. This is my first time speaking in public, and it's scary. And I support 360 bill. Thank you.
Before I ask for the witnesses in opposition, I want to thank the survivors very, very much for speaking. And I want to just applaud your courage. It is very difficult. And I think we all know that abuse of children happens because either the child is in a setting where they feel they cannot tell, or they do tell and it's never revealed. It allows the abuse to go on. So we applaud your courage. And I am an abuse survivor. Years of abuse. I was not able to speak about it publicly until about 6 years ago. So it is very, very difficult, and I really applaud you. And now we will take the witnesses in opposition.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, good morning. My name is Kevin Snyder with Pacific Justice Institute, a Center for Public Policy, where I serve as Chief Counsel. In my capacity as an attorney, much of my practice is focused on advising religious institutions and their clergy. The bill before you seeks to impose criminal penalties of 6 months in jail on a member of the clergy for refusing to break the seal of confession. Private religious counsel, typically referred to as confession, is a millennia-old religious practice. It is common knowledge that the practice is a sacrament of the Catholic Church, but is also part of religious practices of the Eastern Orthodox Church. In the Protestant Reformed tradition, it is found in the Lutheran, Episcopal, and Presbyterian churches. Other churches also have confession as part of their religious practices, such as the American Baptist, Methodist, Latter-day Saints, and Church of Scientology. Anecdotally, in providing legal counsel to pastors, I would estimate that half of evangelical, fundamentalist, and Pentecostal churches maintain strict confidences such that they will not report confession of crimes, nor will they testify in court if subpoenaed. By removing the clergy penitent privilege, such requires clergy to sail between the Scylla and the Charybdis. They must choose between criminal liability or spiritual peril. Failure to immediately bring in the police subjects ministers to prosecution and jail. But disclosing violates religious practices in a sacred trust. The Bill of Rights in our Constitution is a secular decalogue, if you will. It is a list of do's and don'ts directed at the government. Passage of the bill before you would break the first clause of the first commandment, if you will. The Religion Clause provides that no law can be passed that prohibits the free exercise of religion. Placing clergy in a position such that they will be gored by one or the other of two horns of a dilemma is precisely what the First Amendment forbids. Just as Congress rightly exempted clergy from the military draft, so too this body should have the prudence to not conscript ministers into the ranks of law enforcement. There are well over 40 categories of individuals that have been placed at the service of the state in relation to reporting suspicions of child abuse and neglect. The church should not be used as a tool of the state. Madam Chairman, thank you for your deliberation on this matter and for your service to the community, and I urge the members to vote nay.
Thank you. Do we have other witnesses in opposition? Yes, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Andrew Rivas, and I'm the Executive Director of the California Catholic Conference, and I am here to express the Bishop's opposition to the bill and offer myself as a person to talk to as to why we would be opposed to the bill. And let me first start by saying that it is a self-defeating bill, and that's one of the reasons why we oppose it.
Any other witnesses in opposition? All right. Questions or comments from, yes, Senator Jackson.
Yes, to the attorney who's here, as I had mentioned earlier with respect to the Second Amendment, we have no amendments that are unrestricted and unqualified. And certainly the First Amendment, in terms of freedom of religion, we do have laws prohibiting bigamy. And those are contrary to certain religious groups. So there is no amendment that is without some restriction. And I'm sure you are aware of that. The fact of the matter is that we have had a plague, an epidemic of excuses and claims of religion, which have allowed pedophiles and abusers to exist in this country and this world unfettered for far too long. And the notion that talking about at the service of the state, I would submit that it is immoral and against God's will for people to abuse children. And I think it is the responsibility of the state to do everything it can to make sure that does not continue. I think we would be remiss in our responsibilities to accept any claim that religion and man-made religion supersedes the protections that we owe children in particular in our society. So I would suggest that your First Amendment argument is outdated. As was mentioned, there are many other states where this has taken place without repercussion. That the state, the people, do have the right to limit certain practices that are believed to be inappropriate, immoral, and certainly to give a pass because someone goes in and confesses behavior that is offensive to mankind and probably to God, but I'll let God make that decision. I don't pretend to know whether this is something that would be acceptable, but I suspect, given the notion of good and evil, and God being good and the devil being evil, that if we were going to have that religious discussion, that's where I think we would land on God's side and the side of good. But we are a society. We are governed by laws. We are governed by what we believe to be what is morally correct and what is in the best interests of our communities and society. And I would submit accepting and condoning, allowing this kind of behavior to continue on a claim of religious freedom, I think is anathema to everything we hold dear. And I hope it is anathema to everything that we hold dear. So First Amendment, Not unlimited. Second Amendment, not unlimited. We are a society of human beings, and we try to protect ourselves and each other as best we can. So I want to thank you for bringing this bill, and I want to thank the witnesses for coming forward. I'm sure this was not an easy thing to do, but this has got to stop. And with that, I would move the bill.
Thank you. We have a motion. Senator Morlock.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Snyder, I just want to say that we've exempted penitential communication when it was first addressed back in '97, but we still have failures. So what is your recommendation? Because I appreciate your argument, but I also appreciate what was just stated. You know, where do we find the balance that we stop certain activities in organized religion?
Well, the penitent clergy privilege is very narrow. It's when someone goes to a minister in private for penitential purposes and communicates and confesses that. It is not dealing with ecclesiastical boards. For example, when a priest goes before a tribunal of his own denomination, that group is not covered by the clergy penitent privilege. And so that, I believe that there are already, most circumstances are covered by this. And so so I don't believe broadening that into areas that are a sacrament of the church. I think that is anathema. That is a deep problem in the notion that the First Amendment is outdated. Is a troubling statement coming from this body.
Well, excuse me if I may. Nobody said the First Amendment is outdated. We said it is not unlimited, and you as an attorney, I am sure, know that very well. So please do not misconstrue my statements.
Senator Morlock, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Weavis, any comments?
Yeah. The first comment I would make is I was surprised by Senator Hill's press statement listing all the states. As the former Catholic Conference Director for the state of Texas, I didn't know of any state where the penitential communication right wasn't protected. And in speaking to the other directors, I was told that they are still protected to this day. The only state that I know of that doesn't have the protection is Texas. It never has. But it's my understanding, at least the time that I lived in Texas, that the penitential communications were honored and respected. The other thing I would respond with in terms of how the penitential protection works is by its very nature, people are attracted to their religious leaders, their priests, their ministers, their rabbis, out of a feeling of trust. And in sharing their failures with those folks, the intent is to have a better relationship with God. If this bill were to pass and a priest were to report something like this to authorities, I don't think anyone would then use the penitential communication to share their feelings any longer. It would be gone. And that said, I should also point out, within the Catholic structure, even if this bill were to pass, priests would not be able to come forward and reveal what was stated in the penitential communication under the rules of canon law, which would excommunicate the priest automatically.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Other comments or questions on part of my colleagues? I have a few. I referenced that this silence is what has allowed children to continue to be abused, but I really should not have used children alone. It has allowed anyone, adults, children, any age, to continue to be abused. And we see that in powerful institutions that unfortunately not all, but many are, I don't want to say necessarily designed such, but within those powerful institutions, if there are abusers, that the entities protect themselves. So we see it again and again and again, whether it was in the entertainment industry or different faith-based groups or scouts organizations or so many things, employers, workplaces, where until we have had laws to make it safe for people affected to report without retaliation and without consequence, minimal consequence to themselves, that the silence continues the abuse. And we see it again and again and again in any number of institutions, and we've taken many, many actions, whether it's changing workplace rules or a whole host of other laws in order to protect abusers and to make it as safe as possible for them to come forward. What this bill does is put the religious folks on the level playing field with all other mandatory reporters, which I think is absolutely appropriate at this time, given what we know about the prevalence of abuse within these religious settings. And that for us not to would be putting our head in the sand. So I support the bill and appreciate, Senator Hill, that you brought it back. And unless there's any other comments or questions, and the last thing I would say to those of you who have spoken maybe for the first time, it does get easier to speak about it. But it never, the experiences that you experience, they never go away. You don't forget. But it does get easier to speak about it, and it's healing. May we have a roll call?
May I close, Madam Chair?
Yes, sorry, Senator Hill, you may close.
I just wanted to highlight a few points, and thank you for your comments, and Senator Jackson, thank you for yours. And I want to thank the witnesses who are here under a great, I'm sure, pain today. It did not go unnoticed, nor is it or unvalued by your comments. You interestingly made the comment about head in the sand, Madam Chair, and I think, as one of the witnesses in opposition stated, that a person going to the church or going into a confessional or having that communication now won't be able to do that. But I think where the head in the sand is this also would apply to clergy and clergy communication or knowledge of. So when a member of the clergy knows that another clergy or hears of or sees or hears something, they will have to report that in the future. And I think that's where one of the problems is. And related to Texas, actually on the Catholic Diocese website, it clearly states that Texas law does not respect the confidentiality of the penitential communications. So it's very clear there, and it seems to be working. And as Senator Jackson so ably commented, no freedoms are absolute. We have freedom of speech, but as we know, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. We have freedom of religion and the ability to exercise and practice that religion, but as we know, polygamy from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is not legal. And just a couple of years ago in this building, we passed a mandatory vaccination law that eliminated exemptions, religious exemptions from your religion, because the greater harm caused by the exercise and practice of a religion should be considered. And that's exactly what we're doing today. I respectfully ask for your aye vote, members, and thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hill. And before the roll call, apologies for indulging me, committee members, but the other comment I was going to make is that I guess it shouldn't surprise us, but one of the things that I have been kind of astounded at, maybe astounded is too strong of a word, but in our since our passage of SB 1421, which allowed for the first time certain records around investigations of police misconduct, certain, only very specific incidents, the at least within covered by the press, the predominant records that ended up being released are records related to law enforcement's abuse of their power towards in sexual assault and sexual abuse circumstances. And so it's just another example of powerful institutions that by us not having full transparency, it can perpetuate. Now, certainly we know that all religious people do not engage in this level of abuse. All law enforcement do not. It is a minority, but the more that it's covered up, then the more it can continue. So, Senator Morlock.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to be careful that we resolve something that needs to be corrected. But I'm also a little nervous as a representative of taxpayers that we find ourselves in litigation over this bill should it pass. We had one a few years ago where we said abortion clinics pro-life or pro-clinics need to have a sign, and that went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court and lost. I want to be careful about the expenditure of funds. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm just sensing that we may be stepping into an area that is a righteous cause, but may have an expensive disappointment after a few years. So I'll be laying off on this bill today, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, may I respond as the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee very briefly?
Certainly, Senator.
Very briefly, there are times when the courts are the avenue we need to pursue. And if it's to protect the innocent people from abuse, and if it's to challenge a practice that has so-called protections under religious belief, exemptions, I think it's probably an appropriate place for the United States Supreme Court ultimately to make decisions about just the extent to which we are going to allow the claims of religious belief supersede the protections of people and the public welfare. So that might be an interesting issue should it get to the court, and perhaps appropriately so. Perhaps it isn't for us to make that decision as to whether the Constitution should be extended as far as the First Amendment goes to allow pedophiles to be able to continue their pedophilia if they seek absolution from their church. And that might be a very interesting case. I suspect the court will come down protecting the public, but sometimes we should be welcoming of the opportunity for the judiciary to exercise its responsibilities under the Constitution, and appreciate your concerns.
All right, we've had the close. Without further discussion, we'll have a roll call.
Motion is due pass to appropriations. Skinner?
Aye.
Skinner, aye. Morlock? Bradford? Jackson?
Aye.
Jackson, aye. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mitchell, aye. Moreau? Weiner?
We will hold the roll open until my absent members are able to return, but I greatly appreciate your participation, your testimony, and thank you, Senator Hill.
Thank you, members. Colleagues, appreciate it very much.
All right, so we will now go to item 7, SB-224, Senator Grove.
Pardon me?